Coming up, Lav and I take a deep dive on where we are at with the Super Golf League and revisit Joaquin Niemann's dominating performance at Riviera on tonight's Riders Block. Hello, Lav. You and I both are on location at Riviera Country Club. I believe you are about a chip shot away from me right now.
Yeah, this actually feels like a hostage video. I feel like I should be holding up a newspaper to show what today's date is.
The winner's press conference is going on right behind me. You can't see it, but Joaquin is right in there, and we will get to Joaquin in just a moment. But before we get to that, so much news this week. And one of the big key moments was where we stand on the Super Golf League. There's so much ground to cover, but I think the key parts of this are Phil Mickelson making some comments in a column that was on the firepitcollective.com, very critical of both the PGA Tour and very critical of the Super League, and that seemed to set the dominoes falling. And the first of those was Dustin Johnson early Sunday morning in a statement announcing his allegiance to the PGA Tour and that he will stay with the PGA Tour. Shortly afterward, Bryson DeChambeau issued a very, very similar statement. Now, this is key, as we all know, because both those guys have been rumored to be heading in that direction. They've been looking hard at the Super Golf League, and I think the running narrative was that they were both going to jump ship and go to the Super Golf League. So where does that leave us, Lav?
Look, what a tumultuous week in the world of golf. When we did the Writers Block on Wednesday, none of this had transpired yet. And yet we started to see kind of like a choreographed effort where the PGA Tour was trotting out various star players to pronounce their fealty to the PGA Tour, such as world number one Jon Rahm doing that, world number two Collin Morikawa doing that as well. And so everything seemed to be aligning, and Phil just went scorched earth. And as you mentioned, it wasn't just against the PGA Tour, but it was with the Saudi Golf League as well. And you couldn't imagine that the organizers of that circuit would be particularly thrilled when he called them murderers, that they're scary MFers, among other things. And so there wasn't a real endpoint to what he was trying to discuss. And then you had the culmination on Sunday. The big takeaway from this, Rex, is what Rory McIlroy told us just about an hour ago, that this thing is, quote, dead in the water. I'm not sure that this is ever going to go away. There's way too much money involved, but for right now, yeah, it's definitely dead in the water.
I think it's very, very dead in the water. However, that being said, and I just said this on Golf Central, there are still plenty of players who have been rumored to have been looking in that direction, for lack of a better term, who we haven't heard from yet. And it's going to be interesting what the Lee Westwoods and the Ian Poulters and the Adam Scotts and all of these other players who seem to be looking at the Super Golf League as a viable alternative to see if they now follow suit or if this is the end. And I think the interesting thing is we also had a chance to talk with Jordan Spieth. It was relief. I think after so many years of rumors and innuendo and just constantly looking over your shoulder, there was a real Super League fatigue. And I think in this particular case, it all came to an end, so to speak, so quickly. That's the part that I was taken with, that I just didn't see the end game for any of this. I didn't know where we were going to end up. I felt like eventually they were going to get however many players they wanted. If it was 48, that was fine, and we were going to move on from there. But I'm not quite sure that's even on the radar anymore.
Rex, this happened in 4 days. 4 days ago, when Phil had the diatribe, we were talking about the 20 players who reportedly had signed up. You know, countless more would follow. This thing seemed more viable, more real than perhaps at any point that had in this process. 4 days later, 4 days. And yet we're talking about the PGA Tour basically back to square one, where the best players in the world are going to be competing on the PGA Tour.
Now, the wild part to me is I can't imagine any universe where you and I would start out tonight's Writers Block and not start with Tiger Woods, and yet that's where we are in the universe. But we get to him very quickly with the second topic. You wrote about Tiger last night. Where do you see him going forward?
Well, the point of my Saturday column on GolfChannel.com was kind of put in stark contrast the Tiger we saw last year in the CBS Sports booth, the Tiger that we saw on Saturday in the CBS Sports booth. You recall last year he was recovering from a fifth back surgery. Look, he didn't look good. His eyes looked heavy. Speech was slurred. Body language was very, very poor. You contrast that 12 months after what was a horrific car accident, which basically imperiled his life and certainly his right leg. I thought it was drastically different. I mean, he was full of energy, full of optimism. He was to poke fun at himself. And I think he was encouraged about the future just because he has all of his limbs intact. But I think that it is still a viable alternative for him to play on the PGA Tour. He said he will play on the PGA Tour in 2022. We just don't know when. Our reports that Tiger has galloped up the 53 stairs from the Riviera's 18th green all the way up to the clubhouse. If that doesn't get you excited about the prospect of potentially him returning in 7 weeks' time, I don't know what can.
I don't know about galloping. I'm going to stop short of that. But he did look better compared to what we saw at the PNC. And I think all of us were impressed with what we saw at the PNC and even at the Hero World Challenge, given where we were a year ago on Wednesday, the horrific car crash. We all remember the scenes. We all remember everything that he went through, all the surgeries. I think the most encouraging part is when he was in the booth, which you wrote about, he was specifically asked numerous times about the Masters, and he is going to be at the Masters. He's committed to going to the Champions Dinner, but he didn't discount the idea that he would possibly play there. He didn't sound overly optimistic, but he didn't completely dismiss it. And I think that's a step. I think that's further than where we were before when it came to Tiger Woods, because I think all of us were under the impression that we probably wouldn't see him this year, that we'd probably wouldn't see him play again until the PNC in December with Charlie at his side. And then maybe we would start talking about the Masters, the Players Championship, the other events that he might end up at. So I think it was very encouraging.
And look, I think the ironic part, Rex, is that what's holding Tiger back is actually the most fundamental aspect of tournament competition. And that is walking the 18 holes in a tournament round or 72 holes in a tournament competition. So you just factor in just walking in the tournament. Then you have to look at all of the days and the weeks and the months leading into that, the training, the amount of miles he's going to have to put on his battered body. He's certainly going to take a toll. He mentioned the beach walks he's going to have to do, the training walks at Medalist he's going to have to endure. It does seem like a tall ask for him to come back at Augusta National, which is the most difficult walk on the PGA Tour, on the major rotation, even for able-bodied men. But if there's anybody who can do it, I think we got out of the doubting Tiger Woods business a long time ago.
Okay, there was a golf tournament. Joaquin Niemann won in really commanding fashion. It was probably a little tighter at the end than he expected, and he clearly did not have his best stuff on Sunday. But how big of a step is this victory for Joaquin?
Well, this is huge. I mean, Joaquin Niemann is just 23 years old. He's younger than all of these young stars that we have on the PGA Tour, whether it's Colin Morikawa or Victor Hovland or Matthew Wolff. I mean, these guys who have been touted now for 2.5 years. And it seems like a lifetime ago that Joaquin Niemann had his breakthrough victory on the PGA Tour. It happened, an event that is now defunct, the 2019 Greenbrier Classic. And so this was a huge step. This was the strongest field that we've had in the PGA Tour in 6 months. All 11 of the top players in the world were here. Obviously, this is a golf course I think many players consider as the best that they're going to play all season long. And to lead wire to wire, the third youngest to accomplish that feat on the PGA Tour, the first since Charlie Sifford on this golf course, was an incredible victory. Vaults him up now to 20th in the world. And I think it just kind of validates why this kid has received so much hype over the past couple of years, because he definitely has the goods.
I think there was something to be said in the body language and the things that the other players didn't say. Every time you asked them about how Joaquin was playing and this commanding lead and how he seemed to be just stomping all over the scoring records here at storied Riviera, they just would kind of roll their eyes like, how's he doing this? Like, I did not expect to see this when he showed up this week, because this is not one of those courses where we normally expect 20 under to win. I mean, I think the scoring record was 20 under by Lanny Watkins in 1985. That's the longest scoring record that's held up on tour. So you get an idea how this classic golf course is held up. And Joaquin just went out and destroyed it. Again, didn't have his best stuff on Sunday. And I think there's probably a really, really good lesson in him, because it's really difficult to come in to a Sunday with that much of a commanding lead. Because in your mind, I can imagine there's really only one bad thing that can happen. And if you blow that lead, you're always going to be the guy that blew that lead.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's been sleeping on this lead forever. I mean, at one point on Saturday, he was leading by 5 shots. At one point on Sunday, he was leading by 5 shots. There was only one scenario in which we would really be, talking about this on Writer's Block. And if he blows it, if Cameron Young somehow cuts into that deficit, which he almost did in the back nine after holding that 6 shot on 15, or if Joaquin Niemann somehow blows that lead late, those are the absolutely disastrous outcomes for him, for a player who is this young in his career. Didn't happen. Instead, he stamped his arrival with a 2-shot victory, and certainly his arrow continues to point up.
And worth pointing out that he had Colin Morikawa and Justin Thomas and Victor Hovland, plenty of really, really good players right behind him. And he blinked a little bit, but he ended up finishing. All right, Haley says move on to our final topic. And you and I are both bound for a red-eye tonight out of LA back home to Florida to get ready for the Florida swing. It was an eventful West Coast. It was a low-scoring West Coast. What's going to stand out in your mind from this year's West Coast swing?
I think, Rex, it has to be the Super Golf League. I mean, we were talking about potentially an existential threat to the PGA Tour, and now we were heading into the Florida swing and into Jay Monahan's backyard with the Players Championship just a couple of weeks away. You wrote a great column on golfchannel.com that I encourage everyone to go check out. But look, that threat has been subdued for now. It's probably always going to be lingering out there. It's probably going to be hovering over the proceedings. I think it's probably been beneficial for the PGA Tour to kind of receive this outside threat. I think many of these changes were likely to come around anyway with more money in these players' coffers just because the new media rights deal which kicked in at the start of 2022. A little competition, though, Rex, is a good thing. I think it forced the PGA Tour to think a little bit outside the box. And even if you can quibble with the player impact program and some of the metrics they're using for that, I think these players got a whole lot richer because of the specter of the potential rival tool.
It looks like you're in a prison cell, and it also sounds like you're in a prison cell. You know that?
Thank you.
All right, very good. No, I agree with you, and simply because the way we finished, like we were talking about the Super Golf League, you're right. It was a threat. It was something the PGA Tour was clearly taken very seriously, and it was something that, again, I didn't think was going away anytime soon. I thought the end game was years, not months or days away, and for it to unravel on this Sunday the way it did, and there's still a light, and I'm sure that this isn't the end of it, but effectively.
But no one's gonna watch that. This thing is
no one's going to watch it, and I don't think any of the players who are still, let's call them outstanding, are going to make that jump simply because without any stars, it's really, really hard to get any kind of traction. And I don't know what the plan was. I don't know what the media plan was as far as how are they going to broadcast these, how are they going to bring all of these tournaments to the world, but it certainly doesn't hold up if you don't have a Bryson DeChambeau or a Dustin Johnson or even a Phil Mickelson, who hasn't stated publicly, but he seemed to pretty much wrap up his chances with those comments, as we pointed out in the firepitcollective.com story. So yeah, I'm going to go with that. And I think there's also something to be said for this threat did cause the tour to get better. I was speaking with Adam Scott yesterday, and he pointed out that professional golf is already better. You already have a very sizable investment from the PGA Tour to the DP World Tour. You already have a very sizable invested in the Asian Tour from Live Golf. I mean, so we can sit here and wonder about that. But there's been plenty of things that the PGA Tour has also done to move it in the right direction. And I also think you start seeing players more and more question where the PGA Tour is, and I think that's going to be a good thing because it's going to force the tour to stay on their toes. All right, like I said, both of us have a red eye to make. We will be right back at this next week. I will be home. He will be home as the Florida swing starts at the Honda Classic. Thanks for joining.